Welcome to Ploughman's Backyard. Today is another gardening video. These plants are looking gorgeous. The only thing about starting your pepper plants, basically I'm growing jalapeno, bell peppers, and a couple banana peppers. Sweet ones, of course. The only problem with starting them as early as I do is sometimes around April to May, they start shooting out and budding out flowers that can turn into peppers. Now you might think that's a good thing, an indication that your plants are doing fantastic and you're on the right track. The only problem with that is if you leave the peppers on, it could stunt your growth of your pepper plants. Now this pepper plant looks fantastic. The only thing is, I know that this pepper plant can grow much bigger with larger foliage. I actually have a few. There's probably about 6 little buds of flowers on this. And by keeping them on, I'm actually going to be keeping this plant stunted at this height and this growth. What I need to do, because I want a bigger plant, what I want to do is take off these flower buds. Now you might think, isn't this an indication that the plant is done growing? That's not the case either. By seeing that the plant is looking good and growing flower buds, it's actually an indication, 1, that there's not enough fertilizer, 2, irregular temperatures, and 3, that the pot that it's in is not large enough and we need to upsize it. Now, interestingly enough, we have 2 different pot sizes, a 4x4 and a 3x3, and both of these, even though they look good, this one is starting to produce the flowers. This one also is starting to produce the flowers on it, even though it's smaller than the other one. So it's not an indication of the plant's maturity. The only time that you really don't want to cut off the buds is if you're growing a very, very hot pepper plant, because they take much longer to produce actual peppers. Now, I'm not wanting the peppers to start right away, and even when I go, so I'm probably going to be planting these peppers not for another month. When I plant these peppers outside, it could then start producing flowers and budding out again. Now, when you're planting your plants outside, it's a good idea to make sure that the plants get a really good root system going, which means that if they start producing buds within a couple days of planting outside, you still want to cut off those buds, at least for 2 to 3 weeks. And what that's going to do, it's going to focus more growth on the root than the actual plant. The larger the root, the larger the plant, and the more harvest you're going to get from your peppers. So when starting out your pepper plants, it's a good idea to fertilize them because they need a lot of nitrogen to begin growing good root systems. So when you have your peppers in pots, you can see that the budding out is happening of the flowers. You know then that the nutrients in the soil and the fertilizer has basically been depleted, because once the budding happens, you're seeing the maturity of the plant happening. It's an indication that there's less nitrogen, because pepper plants, once they reach maturity, they don't need as much nitrogen and as much fertilizer. And that's why this one has gone to flower, because there's not enough nitrogen, meaning it's indicating that the plant, that it's reached its maturity, which it hasn't. Upsizing the pot and increasing the nitrogen in your fertilizer is going to help this plant grow bigger, more foliage. You want more branches, because the bigger the plant, the more fruit you're going to get from it. I'm not sure if you can see it or not, but there actually is a little flower here. There's another one here, and one here. About 4 or 5, possibly 6 starting. So I've let this one get at least big enough that you can probably see it on camera. And what we're going to do is we're going to cut them off. Now, I know it's going to be really hard. It's even hard once I see my tomato plants start getting flowers. Right now, my cucumbers actually are flowering and have little cucumbers on them, and you need to cut them back in order to make the plant be more successful once it gets outside. Because if the plant starts producing fruit in the pots, basically that's its lifespan. It's reached its maturity, it's done its job, and it's produced fruit to produce more seed to produce another plant. Keeping the plant itself from producing the fruit, which has a seed, you're actually making the plant last longer. So as hard as it is to cut back those flowers in your started plants indoors or your seedlings, it is necessary, because we don't want that plant to finish off its life cycle too early. Okay, now I'm going to go, and you can actually break the little flowers off with your fingers, or you can use a pair of scissors or pruning shears. I'm just going to use a pair of scissors just because I don't want to damage the plant or the leaves or the stalk of this pepper plant since it's doing so well. So basically what I'm going to do is you want to carefully take off this little pepper flower here. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to continue just to snip them off. Now you don't want to remove them when they're too little that they could damage the plant because your big fingers will get in the way. So you want to make sure that the flower heads are enough that you're not going to damage your plants. So you do need to let them grow a little bit. So there's one more here that I can see that I need to cut. And this one's much smaller, and I would not go any smaller than that. So make sure that they've grown enough that they got a little bit of a stem. And I still have about, I want to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 flowers left on the top of this plant that I have to leave because they don't have enough to cut. So I am going to have to let that continue to grow. So these other 2 plants here, they also have little buds on them. You cannot see them very well, much like the ones on the top of this plant. I have to leave those other flowering buds until they get larger because I could wreck the stalk of the plants. Well, I hope that answers your questions on whether you should be removing those flower buds from your pepper plants. And I hope that you found this video helpful. And if you have, please give it a thumbs up. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell because we have other great content I know you're not going to want to miss. And we love having you around. So till next time, keep planting.